Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast, where we take the emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected. I'm your host, Tara Wages, and I am here with marriage and family therapist and clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis Hill. Today, we are going to dive into that moment where we are disconnected and one of us has to make the decision to do the right thing to bring us back together. And sometimes we don't want to make that decision. And so we're going to get to the emotion behind what leads us there. And I want to share with you a free resource that we currently have on our website, where you can go right now and listen to a private conversation that we have created about the emotion in sex. So you can go to connectioncodes.co/sex talk. Welcome, guys.
Hello, world. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Wow. Love it. Love that we can be back together.
Yes,
and,
yes.
It was really fun. Just yesterday, I had someone over that was working on all my flower beds, and a lot of joy in that, by the way. And I came out to leave, but I wanted to ask her something. And she goes, hang on, I'm listening to two famous people on their podcast. And she was listening to our podcast.
That's
so
awesome.
A lot of identity in that, and just love that people are listening.
Yes.
And that this is making a difference. So much joy. Thank you, Tira, for
yeah.
getting us to this point in all of this.
Yeah. No, thank y'all. I love hearing that as well. I've had people message me on Instagram and say, we're enjoying this so much. And even talking with my mom about it, she's like, I relate to Phyllis so much. And I can just see how this is giving people the opportunity to easily share with people that they care about what the mission is. And that's bringing connection to humans. You know, that's the goal. And I can see how it's already playing out in my extended family. You know, I've been talking about it for so long, but now they can just click and listen.
Yeah,
So be sure and share this. And I'm really excited to dive into the episode today because I think a lot of people struggle with this. We've had a few people write in and say, well, what do we do if we're both not willing to make that move? Or sometimes I don't want to do the connection codes. Like we have so much anger with each other or past trauma that it's difficult. And, you know, recently Wes and I had a conflict, and we actually shared the conflict on one of the episodes. We walked through y'all in one of your in session podcasts. And so I was thinking back to that moment of me not wanting to connect. And that's unusual because I know how well this works. But in that moment, I had so much hurt and so much anger that I was like, you know what? I don't want to show up. You know, I don't want to give him the benefit of me just bending in, I guess. And it was really difficult. And he was so gentle and sent me an email because I was not answering his phone call, saying, hey, you remember that language that we've learned? You know, I can't wait to practice that with you tomorrow. And I literally laughed out loud when I read that because it was so gentle and so kind of him. And so I had to make that decision of, am I going to show up in this? You know? And I realized in my head, I was thinking, dang it, I kind of have to, you know? He just called me. He called me in and said, hey, you know better now. You know, we have this thing that we can use. So let's do it. And so why is it against my nature to want to show up still? Why is it so hard when I'm so angry with him? And I'm like, it's just easier to be like, I'm not answering your call. I don't want to talk to you. I'm mad at you, and leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we try to emphasize so much is that Phyllis and I are just pilgrims on the journey, just like everybody else. It's just the human condition. It's the human experience. And my fear so much of the time is that people think that we won the relational lottery. We got lucky.
Yeah.
You know, we found the right one or something. And if that's the case, the odds of that are so small. I mean, there's 8 billion people on the planet. The odds of you finding the one that fits with you are pretty much zero. And we didn't marry the right one, and we didn't marry the right way. We eventually figured it out, and we now have the tools to do it. But that exact same thing happens for us. Of course, we're the founders of the connection codes, so there are times that Phyllis will say to me, babe, do you remember the connection codes? I'm like, don't pull that stuff on me. That's psychobabble. Don't. And of course, that always makes both of us laugh, and which helps even in that exact moment.
Right.
But again, I just want to emphasize to people that we're just humans too. We're just pilgrims on the journey, and the exact same thing happens for us.
Yeah. And, I was thinking of other couples, especially because we've been married for, 40 years. That's a long time. And we have and been around people who've been together a long time, and they'll even say to us, yeah, we don't fight. And they say it in a way, though, that it's not a joy statement. It's almost like, I don't see any joy in it. It's more that they know now what topics to completely stay away from.
Right.
And if anything, almost like they know their partner well enough that if they get close to a topic or close to what could be a fight, they just both shut down and walk away, and they're just polite. And I know that when you kind of break that down, there's a lot of loneliness in that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking back to what you had shared on a previous podcast about the fight that you guys had, and that, in that there is, even in the retelling of it, it's that there's a lot of loneliness that both of you experienced that night. Wes was out of town in a hotel, you're home with the kids. There's for both of you, a lot of loneliness in staying disconnected, in saying, in that anger, it's like in that hurt, because you felt the hurt, you felt that kind of that anger in it, but there's also tremendous loneliness. And I think that for us, we definitely got there, in the early years we fought, and that was painful. Just the yelling, and you get to a point even where you think if you say it one more time, the other will hear you. If you say it louder, the other will hear you. If you throw something across the room, they'll pay attention. They'll hear you. They'll finally get it. And then eventually you realize none of that works. And it just causes more pain and more disconnect. And then I think a lot of couples go through a season of just calming themselves down and just being really quiet.
Right.
But never really knowing how to resolve and how to really get to that emotional connection.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think Glenn was saying just a second ago that we are very much pilgrims on this journey, and that these tools make a big difference in our lives every day.
Right.
And there are moments where you kind of go, you forget, or you have to show up for yourself even. And I love, and matter of fact, Glenn and I were talking about this yesterday, that I think if we could convey that this is so powerful for you as an individual, like for you to show up for yourself, for you to be able to go, I'm going to find what's happening with me.
Yeah.
I am curious, and I'm going to find, because I want to release this out of my body.
Right.
I don't want to carry this. I don't want to hold this. I want to show up for me. I'm worth it. I deserve it. And I want the physical healing for myself by releasing this emotion.
Yeah.
And to realize that, wow, there's a lot of power in that, and that you deserve that for yourself. And how your partner reacts is, almost like a choice for them.
Right. But they have to make that choice. And that's what's hard, is because sometimes we just don't want to make the choice to show up. Sometimes it feels like it would just be easier, or like they don't deserve for us to show up. He has disrespected me, or he doesn't listen to me. And so he doesn't deserve for me to now be vulnerable with him. And that's what I was battling that night, and at other times previously, where I was just like, I almost just want to, this makes me sound like a horrible human, but I think that I'm not alone and I'm willing to show you my dirt, that I almost like want to punish him, for not being what I needed him to be in whatever moment it was, because that specific night he hung up on me, we talked about that. And so I wanted to punish him after that and said, oh, now you want me to show up and do this connection codes thing with you? Yeah. No. And I really had to do some self-talk of like, okay, I know that this is what we need to heal. We've got to use this, but in this moment, I really don't want to.
Well, as a therapist with a whole bunch of seat hours, as a scientist, as a researcher that has been in hot pursuit of this field for a very long time, and one of my most repeated phrases to Phyllis is, I'm fascinated by human behavior, and I'm always wanting to find out what pushed the human behavior. Each of us is capable of doing stupid things, of presenting ourselves poorly. We all do that.
Right.
But I want to find out, which I'm not condoning the behavior. I'm not putting a check mark by, and I'm not saying, oh, well, Tira's a victim, poor thing.
Right.
So I'm not agreeing. But I want to find out what happened, because I know Tira. I know that Tira wants to be partnered with Wes. She volunteered for that quest, for that mission.
Right.
She cares about her husband. She cares about her marriage. She cares about her family. So something funky is happening here that is blocking her from connecting with her partner. And I'm not blaming her for that at all. Something's happening to her. So I virtually always take things out of the active mode. And yes, I can say to Tira, well, you need to choose to connect with Wes, I guess. But something funky is happening that she wouldn't already be choosing to connect with Wes, that she's not already automatically connecting with Wes. So I want to find out what that is. And based on your description, I think it's just the pain. It sounds like the pain, that Wes became a pain source for you. Well, pain sends us the message that there's a problem. You need to make a change. Well, the easiest way to deal with pain is to get away from it. If you step on a nail, you don't wait an hour and a half. You immediately try to get the nail out of your foot. So Wes became a pain source for you, and I adore Wes. I think he's remarkable and wonderful, and you do too. But in that moment, that's just what's happening. Tira's brain is firing pain. This is a pain source. I want to move away from him. And this pain source is saying, hey, you should connect with me. And this girl's brain is going, no, I don't think so. You just brought me pain. And if I connect with you again, you're going to bring me more pain. And we observe this all the time in sessions with couples where one of them feels hurt by the other, and then the other reaches to touch them, and they literally, their bodies move away, like they will turn their back to them, which of course then the other feels pain as well. And so now they're in this pain cycle. But what happens if I feel hurt by Phyllis and she reaches to touch me, my brain says she's a pain source. Be careful. She's going to hurt you again. No, I've been with this girl a long time. I know that she cares about me, but my brain in that moment is just reacting to the pain.
Right. And that's really interesting to think through that in my head, because I can remember specifically that night telling him, I didn't feel safe with him in that moment. I really, because I'd already vocalized, you haven't followed my energy. You've resisted me. And he was doing it out of good intentions, but that's still what was happening with me. And then hanging up. Well, so then the next morning rolls around and I have to make that choice, because now the emotion, like I'm not flooded with emotion anymore. And I have to make that choice to show up with him and to go through this process, which once we're together again, it's easy to do that. We were able to do that. But in thinking in the moment, texting him and saying, I'm not talking to you tonight, it was because I felt fear with him. I felt like it would escalate. And we've heard from someone else saying that in their home, the phrase, what's happening with you, has now become a trigger for the other person. And so is it more than likely because the other person is feeling an emotion, like they feel fear, they feel that's keeping them from that connection?
Right, probably. But I want to finish up with the other thing.
Okay.
One of the things that Echo, our oldest daughter, who works with us with the connection codes, one of my favorite things that she presents is, for so many parents, out of a good heart, good intention, I'm not judging their motivation in it, but their child falls down and gets hurt, and they will say to the child, you're okay, you're fine, you're all right. And one of the things that Echo says, she goes, no, they're not okay.
Right.
They will be okay when they're okay. And again, parents are doing that because they care about their kids and they don't want the child to experience pain. But the child is feeling pain. The child is not okay.
Right.
And whenever the child's okay, then they will be okay. And I've mentioned before, I can remember my parents would, and I'm sure they were doing the best they knew how at the moment, but my parents would say to me, stop your crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Yep.
And I can remember even when I'm 5, 6 years old thinking, no, I don't cry as a hobby. That I already have a reason. I don't need another reason to cry. I didn't say that to my parents or I wouldn't be here today, but I just always thought that doesn't make any sense. Even when I was 6, I could tell that that's illogical. So the point being, when Tira was 12 months old, 15 months old, if she experienced a parallel experience as what happened with Wes, she would have cried until she was finished crying. How long would that have been? I have no idea, and I don't really care. So if Tira would end up crying for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 3 minutes, 8 minutes, well, that's how long she's going to cry. As adults, we tend to not do that. So the equivalent maybe, the parallel maybe would be for Tira to talk to Wes and just literally say pain until the pain subsides. And that's probably not going to be 30 seconds, but for her literally just to look at him and go, pain, hurt. I feel hurt. I feel sad. I feel lonely. I feel pain. There's pain. There's pain. There's pain. And for Wes to just be oohing you all the way through.
Yeah.
And that feels really weird to us because we don't function that way societally. But when we sit with couples, we'll often do that just to get them to keep repeating it until it begins to dissipate. And I don't care if that's 30 seconds or 60 seconds or 2 minutes. And if the other is able to ooh them, that emotion will subside. That emotion will dissipate much, much quicker than we even think that it will if we're allowed to just keep repeating it. So that's what blocked, I'm convinced, that's what blocked Tira from Wes, is the pain was still there and then the fear of future pain.
Yeah.
I would say.
I love that analogy that you just shared that Echo says with, about her kids. That happened this morning in my house. I was getting ready. My now 5-year-old came in the room. I fell and he has tears, and instinctually I said, "Are you okay?" And he walked out the door. And it hit me in that very quickly, no, he's not okay. He just came in here crying.
Wow.
And he left the room. He didn't even respond to me saying, "Are you okay?"
Wow.
And so then I said, "Where's the hurt?" He immediately walked back into the room, showed me his knees. Wow. Here is the hurt. Wow. And so I looked at Wes and I said, we need to stop asking them if they're okay. Yep. They're not okay. We need to be asking them, where's the hurt? Wow. And so we do that even now. That's so good as adults. Where's the hurt? That's essentially another way of like what's happening with you.
Exactly.
And so it may be because we ask, this lady wrote in and said, what's happening with you is a trigger now in their home. And what's happening with their partner more than likely is a pain, a fear, a hurt. Yep. And so maybe even asking the question if they can tell their partner is triggered. Yep. Where's the hurt? What's the hurt?
Yeah. Wow. The pain and the fear of pain. We've done a lot of research on that where, somebody takes a stick and they, swing it really fast at your arm or something. The pain region of your brain will trigger even if they don't hit you. If they stop it, they're doing it on purpose. They stop it right before it hits your skin and the pain region of your brain triggers. So there's the fear and the fear region activates as well. So there's the fear of the pain. So, and of course we could go, no, he didn't actually hit you with the stick. You shouldn't feel pain and you shouldn't feel fear. Well, of course you're not trying to feel pain. You're not trying to feel fear, but we anticipate that pain experience. And so the fear kicks in. So my guess would be, and this is sight unseen with this family dynamic, but probably people, the members of the family feel fear. That was certainly true for Phyllis and me for so long. I had so much fear of her and to this day. And if you followed us around, you think Glenn's an idiot because Phyllis is incredibly safe for him. I don't like to say absolutes. I don't like to say 100%, but dang near 100%, she's safe for me.
Right.
She's virtually 100% safe for me 100% of the time. But that doesn't mean I always feel safe with her. The trick now is that I just tell her in the moment, I go, ooh, I feel some fear. She does the 3 phrases. Ooh, what's happening with fear? What am I missing? So my guess would be in this situation that you're describing, this family environment, that there's a lot of fear of pain based on, it's what we call trauma, based on past events. And so now whenever the mom or whoever you said it was says what's happening, there's the anticipation that, there's going to be pain here in the next 10 seconds, 30 seconds.
Well, it's so interesting. I think I do experience sadness when I hear that things, of the connection codes can cause a trigger or can cause more pain. Like, or we've even heard the expression, he uses it as a weapon, and I do have to accept that there's a lot of things we can use as a weapon. I mean, even an apology, we've definitely mentioned this before, that I have seen that play out in our early days. It's kind of, and I think Glenn mostly felt it as a weapon. I would say, well, I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry. Well, he experienced that as a stab, not as a true form of connection,
right?
Not a bridge for sure. And so I'm sure that, kind of getting to the bottom of in that, like in the fact that there's certain terms with the connection codes that are causing pain is to kind of get to like the bottom of that.
Yeah, and that's part of the power of the third phrase of the 3 phrases, to be able to say, ooh, what's happening? I missed it. And that was so powerful for us for many years. And I think more Phyllis saying it to me, hopefully it was mutual, but for Phyllis to say, I'm missing something here. And as parents, Phyllis and I have gone back to because we have 4 adult children, and we've said to them, I think we missed stuff. So I'm thinking about what happened when you were 17. What happened for you there? I felt like I really missed that. And we've literally gone back and gone over lots and lots of situations with them. And we're so connected now as a family. We're safe enough with each other that the most hysterical settings I ever have is when my 4 children start talking about growing up with their dad, and which happens to be me. And just hear, and they embellish a bit, but the stories are hysterical. And some of them, an outsider might go, well, that's really hurtful, but I'm just entertained by it now because I'm like, yep, that's the way I function. That's the way I operate. And it drove them nuts. And they didn't know what to do because, they're 8, 10, 12, whatever. But I'm able to say to them, yep, I missed on that. Oh, shoot, I missed on that too. So that might be a big thing in this family situation you're talking about for the mom. Did you say it was the mom? Did I get that right? Mm-hmm. For the mom to be able to say, I think I'm missing on some stuff here. Yeah. Can you help me get what I'm missing? What all happens for you there? Because as Phyllis said, the what happens can become weaponized. Like, well, what happened for you? Well, now we're not inviting them. We're kind of commanding them. We're demanding. Right. That's a whole different experience.
Well, I think too, and again, it'd be great if for some of the listeners, just to even help us in how we present this, how we teach this, if some of the listeners, if this is ringing true for you to write in and to explain this a little better to us, how it becomes a weapon in your relationship.
Wow.
Because I think we don't use it as a weapon in our marriage. Right. And so sometimes it's hard for us to understand how it can play out. But one thing that is coming to my mind in those scenarios is to start with yourself. Like in the idea of what's happening for you, it's almost like it puts the pressure on the other person in that moment instead of going to what is happening for me. I want to share with you what's happening for me.
Ooh, yeah.
And how important that is, because I think that there's times where we do point the finger. Yes. Like we demand, like right now, tell me what is happening with you, instead of in a vulnerable way, sharing what is happening with me. Yeah. And I remember, and I think we've shared this on a podcast, an incident where Glenn and I sat down and did the wheel. And I asked him, I had been gone on a girls' trip, and I was coming home. I came home, and we just, in the car ride, after dropping off all these different girlfriends of mine, we had a super big disconnect, and I didn't even understand or know what was happening with Glenn. And it didn't make any sense to me. And I just had this fabulous trip, and Glenn had picked us up at the airport. And so when we got home, I asked, could we do the wheel? And Glenn didn't want to in that moment. But then I said, can I do the wheel? Can I share? And it was, I think it was really out of desperation. Like I was so confused in that moment and so hurt by his reaction. Like I just was really confused. But I knew that if I started with myself, but it was difficult. So, because I had to be vulnerable.
Right.
And as I started to do the wheel, I know that I was crying because in saying every one of those, it was like I felt so vulnerable and in my confusion because I really didn't understand all this energy that was coming at me from him. But I was willing to be vulnerable first.
Yeah. Right.
I was willing. And then I remember when I was done, it was almost like I saw that he started to melt. Like I could see it. I could see it in his demeanor, like even body language. Like he was kind of stiff and almost like sitting there just still fuming. And as I shared and as my tears just flowed, he began to melt and I could see his body relax.
Right.
And then when I asked him if he would do the wheel, he still didn't want to.
Yeah.
And I just made space for that.
Yeah.
And then because I made space and I didn't react and I didn't point my finger at him and be like, this is the, connection codes, like do it. Then within, I don't know if it was a full minute, it might've only been 20 seconds. Then he began to do the wheel. And then I heard his heart. And then I understood, oh my gosh, there was so much coming in just his fear that I wouldn't come back home and his loneliness while I was gone. Like, oh my word. Then I understood what had happened in the car, like what had blown up in the car on our way home.
Well, and it took you, I think that moment you walked in the house, you were disconnected. You didn't understand why. And oftentimes we want to just be like, well, if they're going to act like that, I'm done. And that is our life pre-connection codes. That is what we would have traditionally done. And so that's why I keep thinking, I tell myself the phrase of when you know better, you do better. Because now that I know this, I'm called because I want to be better for Wes, because I want to be connected for him. I'm responsible for stepping into that space of vulnerability, because otherwise we'll just live disconnected. And how much better it was for you, even though you were hurt in that moment, to be willing to be vulnerable so you could reconnect within, I don't know, an hour's time versus spending the rest of that day at odds.
Yeah. But again, if that had happened for Tyra when she was 12 months old, she would have just kept crying.
Right.
And I'm not trying to get everybody, all the adults in the world, just cry all the time. But I almost wish they would, when they need to cry, just cry.
Yeah.
And then at least Wes would see that, oh, she's crying. So there's still something happening for her. And, when Phyllis did the wheel, I remember that so distinctly, and that's the Connection Codes protocol, is that vulnerability begs for safety. So whenever I see her vulnerability, I virtually can't. I know technically I could, but I virtually can't not fall in to her, not be present for her. And the example that we give, if you walk out of a restaurant and you see that somebody's fallen on the ground, they hit their head on a brick wall and there's blood on the ground, it is coded inside of you to help that person. We virtually can't, if you and I, Tyra, did that, we went to lunch and we walk out and there's somebody on the ground bleeding, I can't look at that person and go, whoa, that's a lot of blood. Look at that. Wonder what happened to them. Well, anyway, you want to go get some coffee? I just can't do that. I see this person, they're in a position of vulnerability. You and I would both gasp and we go, oh my gosh, what happened? And we would rush to them to help them. So once Phyllis showed me her vulnerability, once she actually did physically cry, but even if she wasn't physically crying, just for me to see what's happening with her, it just calls out safety.
Right.
For me, there's a story in the book about a couple that they set their phone every day to do the core motion wheel together, and they were in a conflict, and their phone alarm went off, and he walked in and he threw the wheel on the floor, and he said, "It's time to do the stupid wheel." And he was so mad at her. And when they shared it with me, he said, "I was mad at her. I wanted to be mad at her, and I wanted to stay mad at her.
Right.
But the phone had gone off, and we were programmed to do it every day when the phone goes off." So, and then he said, and you're going to have to go first because I need to ooh you for 2 minutes. And so she did the wheel and shared what was authentic, what was vulnerable for her. And when they shared the story, he said, I found myself losing the anger. And I was frustrated even that I was losing the anger because I wanted to be mad at her, but it started dissipating. And 2 minutes later, I'm like, the anger's kind of gone.
Right.
And then I shared with her vulnerably for 2 minutes. She oohed me the whole time. And 4 minutes later, I kind of still wanted to be mad, but I just virtually couldn't because I had seen her.
Yeah.
I'd seen her in her vulnerability. She had seen me. She had been present and safe for me. And that changed the whole dynamic. Absolutely.
And that's exactly what it is, like how I was feeling. I wanted to just stay mad. Like I wanted, anger is kind of it feels safe. It's a safe space.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
And so it's easier to be mad than to step into that moment of vulnerability. And so sometimes it takes that person, even if when you're feeling mad, like, and that is actually that should be our trigger, I'm feeling mad, so I need to step into a position of vulnerability, especially if we're with someone that we know we are safe with.
Right. But you might not feel safe in that moment.
Right.
But again, for me, I would rather tear in that moment just to literally just go anger until it begins to dissipate. I don't care if she says it 300 times. Hopefully Wes could just ooh her in that. And pretty soon, and we always present that, my theory is that virtually all anger in interpersonal relationships is secondary anger. There's something underneath it. There's a core emotion underneath it, which is why we call it secondary, because it's second. The core emotion is what happened first. It could be a microsecond, but it still happened first. So once Tira says anger 134 times, then she's going to, with herself, go use the 3 phrases and go, oh, okay, so what's happening for me? What happened before the anger? What am I missing? Oh, there's pain. Yep, babe, I felt hurt. Pain. I feel pain. Again, hopefully Wes can ooh her all the way through. So my goal is just to get people to their authentic self.
Right.
And I believe that Tira has the right to exist, the right to be human, the right to experience what she's experiencing, and the right to convey that experience every time, anytime that it happens.
I think about how many of us, like you've said it several times, almost like I want to stay angry because I want to punish him. And I think that in a lot of relationships, we do function that way. We think, you hurt me, I'm going to punish you for that.
Right.
And if you play that out, it's like, I'm going to punish you so that you won't hurt me again. And after years and decades, you realize that doesn't work. Yeah. That actually does not work. It doesn't serve its purpose. And we almost wound ourselves more in that mindset. And so if we're willing to look at the failure in that mindset and step away, step back, look down on it and go, oh yeah, I've tried that. And it actually does not get me where I want to get to in this relationship. So I'm willing to try something different.
Right.
And that's what I love about the connection codes, in the sense that, and I hear Glenn say that so often in session, he's like, for the next 30 days, do it like this. And then let's talk about it's almost like you've got to see, wow, this really works.
Right.
Like if you do something, you can keep doing it that way. Yeah. Stay angry, punish, fine, try that. But that's really what you've been doing for a long time, and it didn't get the relationship that you wanted.
Absolutely.
It didn't get the reaction that you wanted. Yeah. You might get an apology out of it, or you might see the other person, your partner or your friend, whoever you treat this way, grovel.
Yeah.
But in the end, you don't even feel victorious in it.
Yeah.
And so to see that, okay, so actually for me to be vulnerable and to say, I felt so hurt by the fact that you hung up the phone on me, and to get that vulnerable and then to see that genuine reaction from the other person, that's when you start to realize, wow, emotion really does connect us.
Yeah, and it helps too just to recognize the biochemics of anger. Anger produces epinephrine, which is adrenaline. Adrenaline is the fastest way to power up.
Oh, wow.
Well, if I feel wounded, I feel small. I need to protect myself. I got to do something. It doesn't matter if it's Phyllis, who's not actually physically wounding me. She's not actually going to rip my throat out. And we reference it as a wolf a lot of times. She's not an actual wolf, but in my brain, my brain's reacting the same as if she was an actual wolf. The brain doesn't distinguish physical pain from emotional pain. So the pain that I'm experiencing or about to experience with her is the same as if I was seeing a wolf in the woods and it was about to rip my throat out. So I power up. I have to do something to protect myself from this wolf, whether a literal wolf in the woods or Phyllis in our home. So the epinephrine kicks in, which is adrenaline. So I get powered up, but that's the body trying to protect itself. That's the psyche protecting the individual. That's not wrong. We just want to be able to find out if it's primary or secondary anger. And if it's secondary anger, find out what is underneath that, because that's connecting. Secondary anger, again, as far as I know, it never is.
Absolutely. And I think back to that night, because I texted him back after he hung up on me and I just said the word sad. And
that's amazing.
That's the only thing that I could, and I was like, I don't want to say, I'm not talking to you. Yeah. This is the only word that I can give you tonight. And that is ultimately, I know it sparked him emailing me after that and saying, hey, let's use the connection codes.
And can I interrupt? Because you could have texted him and said, you're a jerk.
Yeah.
And I think you would have been correct. You would have been accurate. And, we always say that you can be totally correct and absolutely wrong. Because, I think that was pretty jerky for Wes, and I adore Wes, but for Wes to hang up on his wife, well, that's pretty crappy. So, Tira would be correct in telling him that he's a jerk, but she'd be absolutely wrong relationally. And she wouldn't be authentic. What was authentically happening with her is the pain, and sadness fires in the pain region of the brain. And she felt pain. She felt sadness. She wasn't trying to feel pain. She wasn't trying to feel sadness. She just did.
Yeah.
And you doing that, and that's what we're always looking for in any relationship, any interaction, is just an insertion point.
Yeah.
And that was an incredible insertion point for you just to text him and say, sad. And the only thing I'd say is, I think maybe you should have texted him 48 more times, sad.
Yeah.
Because then he'd get, okay, she's experiencing a lot of pain.
Right.
Okay, let me be present with her. Because again, that vulnerability calls out his safety, which it sounds like it did anyway, which is spectacular.
Yeah. And so I will say, because I have one more point to make about this that I've thought about with a different emotion that can cause me to not want to do the will. But I will add here to go back and listen to that episode if you haven't. That's our first in session with Dr. Glenn and Phyllis, where we are working through this issue that night, because what y'all shared with us was groundbreaking. I mean, we walked away with that with our minds blown, honestly. Wow. And so it's a great episode for a couple who, especially somebody that is struggling with being away from each other a lot or struggles with guilt in their family. And so go back and listen. But one more emotion that I have thought about as we have processed this, times that I don't want to be the one to initiate, hey, what's happening with you, or here's the will, let's do it, is when I recognize that I'm feeling my shame because I'm the one that screwed up. I know that I've caused hurt here. I have caused pain. And by me initiating this, I'm like, oh gosh, I've got to admit that I was the jerk this time. And so sometimes it can be our shame that may hold us back from wanting to initiate. And so I think that goes back to Phyllis. What you said was, before we start looking at, well, what's happening with our partner, in those moments of conflict and disconnect, asking ourselves, what is happening with us? Because then I can say to myself, oh, Tierra, you're feeling shame right now because you were being a jerk. So you need to step up. Or I can say, hey, I'm feeling sad right now. And so I need to convey, hey, I'm feeling a lot of sadness right now. So he knows where he is at and it's connecting, and he will want to step up, in that way as well. And so I think that this was so helpful. I know it was helpful for me, for sure, to just realize that, man, even in the moments where it's difficult, even in the moments where it is so hard to be the one to say, hey, this is what's happening with me. This is my hurt. What's happening with you in a loving and gentle way is so much more effective than punishing each other.
Yeah.
Because you're right. It doesn't get us anywhere other than a continual cycle of pain. And that pain lasts way longer than those moments that we encounter here and there now through this. And so thank you so much for that. As we wrap up today, let's go through the core emotion wheel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show how this thing is done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yesterday, driving, watching the two cars take turns running off each other off the road.
Wow.
There was a lot of fear.
That was crazy.
And we were 50 feet behind them. I
Yeah.
thought, okay, this is going to be a 7-car pileup, and we're going to be one of them.
Wow.
A lot of fear in that. Let's see. Felt hurt a couple of days ago. Just was trying to work out our schedule, and I'm always behind. I just have the darndest time keeping up. It's like grabbing a handful of water. I can just never keep up. And it seemed like you were a little bit frustrated with me, which I get, but there's a little bit of pain in that. I feel lonely in that sometimes because I kind of play a unique role. We're very much on a global quest, and I don't feel competent in so many areas in taking this to 8 billion people.
Wow.
And some loneliness in that, and some shame in that. I'm like, I wish I could be better. I wish I could handle more stuff. Some guilt in that at times, especially this week. You've been having a tooth issue, and I just feel guilt that there's so much on you, and you're amazing at it, but we kind of don't have an off day. So I'd love to be able to blow things off for several days while you're experiencing what you experience dentally. Some anger in that. I hate it that we end up having pain issues. I'd love to live a life where we never had the slowdowns, but that does happen sometimes. A little bit of sadness in that too at times, just trying to figure out how to schedule stuff and just issues that we have to handle. So much joy getting to do all this with you. Unbelievable. I mean, I'm mesmerized every day. Pretty much every aspect of our life. Of course, our sex date the other night was spectacular. You
Yes,
always
it was.
laugh at me when I say it was the best ever, but I think it might have been. Hard to tell. It was amazing.
Wow. Thank you. Well, you've already brought up the, I'm having tooth pain. Feel, I think definitely sadness in that, physical hurt, sure. But just, and we kind of talk probably the whole wheel, as far as even guilt, and that I don't have better teeth, that it always gets down to this, and it kind of crops up from nowhere. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I have to deal with this. I can't put it aside. So a lot of stuff, a lot of emotion around my teeth. I was thinking, though, just more specifically about the two of us, and I know I expressed some kind of guilt over something the other day, and you are piping in that you're getting to know me, and that and then I shared with you just that felt some, I think, specific hurt that I said, you're not oohing me well because you are so fascinated by my expression of guilt. So there was some hurt in that. And I, appreciated your reaction in that as far as recognizing that. sad that I have not been able to get out into my flower beds. That we've been so busy, and I don't know quite how to always manage that. Feel guilt that I don't get more done in a day, that my energy isn't better. And then I had a friend remind me that when you have tooth pain, it totally zaps you of energy. So, I get that. I hear that. And I think there's that combination too of just shame of not knowing this season well enough to know how to be productive, but also give myself time to just be outside and play in the flower beds. Because I know that's important to do that, but I don't always know the balance in that. So I do feel shame in that. Fear, I think, just really right now in the moment as to, having to go through all the process and procedure of getting a tooth pulled and an implant done. I've had too many things go wrong in the past when it comes to that. So there's definitely a layer of fear for me in that. Let's see, joy that we are getting to go away next week, right after I have a tooth pulled. A vacation we'd planned. I'm really excited about that. So a lot of joy in that. And let's see, what have I missed? Anger. So anger is always a tough one for me. Maybe anger just around the fact that I have bad teeth. Like I do feel anger in that. Somebody asked me, I think it was my daughter-in-law that said, well, where does that come from? And I said, my mother, I think. That, hereditary. I don't know if that's true or not, but my siblings also have bad teeth. Wow. So, and then did I express lonely? Maybe not. I think that, gracious, this whole thing's about my tooth, but I do feel lonely at times because I think you don't have the same issues that I do in my teeth. And so I think I feel all alone at times with dealing with my teeth issues. Yeah. So.
I get that. Thank you.
Cool. I connect so much with that. Wes and I have gotten in multiple fights over teeth in the past, which is so ironic.
Wow. Okay.
Because I am like you and I have bad teeth. No matter what I do, I am like over the top of taking care of them. He does nothing. The man is good to brush his teeth maybe once a day. And then we'll go to the dentist and they look at him and they're like, it's perfect. They look great. And I'm like, don't tell him that. He needs to floss, And so tooth pain is the worst. I relate. I know. So, and I don't know if it's if it's more common for women because my mom also had bad teeth. And so I relate. And it also is just a reminder of how much our health, when we feel physical pain, it just knocks everything off course. Yeah. And also to tie this back in, our brains can't distinguish emotional pain from physical pain. Wow. So being in disconnect with your partner for long periods of time zaps you out just as much as a bad toothache.
Wow, yeah.
And so
Good
I
reminder.
think that's so incredible to recognize now. I hope that today's episode connected you with us, and just knowing that if you ever feel resistant to the wheel, or to asking your partner or connecting, it's probably because there's a lower level emotion that you're experiencing, whether it's fear of being hurt again or shame that you have actually been the one that was off. We all, every human is capable and responsible. None of us are perfect 100% of the time. For you to recognize what's happening with you, sharing your vulnerability first, or approaching your partner and asking them, where's the hurt? Not are you okay, because they're not okay, but where is your hurt? And let's walk through that together. So if you have not shared the podcast yet with your friends and family, please do that.
Yes.
And get on and leave us a 5-star review, because those are so, I go in and I read the reviews. It's so exciting to see how this is impacting people. So thank you all.
I love it.
Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, which leads us to, you need this.
You deserve this.
Let's do this.
Let's do this.